Lamar Jackson has spent the last few months taking criticism from every direction. But now Pete Carroll has something to say that Lamar's critics need to hear. The Super Bowl winning coach knows the NFL better than most, and he believes many people are forgetting the true impact Lamar can still have on the field. After a difficult 2025 season, are people judging Jackson the wrong way? Carroll has faced Lamar Jackson before and saw firsthand the kind of problem he creates for every defense he goes up against. And the statement he made could completely change this conversation. Because when a coach with his resume explains why Lamar is different, it's something worth paying attention to. Over the next few minutes, you'll see why Pete Carroll's words could be the biggest reminder yet that Lamar Jackson is still far from being an ordinary player. What's up, Flock? My name is Tiago. I'm a Brazilian Ravens fan, and welcome back to Purple Flock TV. Over the last few months, it feels like a lot of people have forgotten who Lamar Jackson really is. One difficult season, filled with injuries and disappointing results in Baltimore, was enough for many people to start questioning a player who has built one of the most impressive careers in modern NFL history. And honestly, some of the criticism feels like it ignores everything he has accomplished over the years. We're not talking about an average quarterback. We're talking about a player who has won 2 MVP awards and changed the way the quarterback position is played. In the middle of all this negativity, one highly respected voice stepped in to remind people what Lamar represents on the field. Pete Carroll, a Super Bowl champion coach with a career full of success, talked about the Ravens quarterback during an interview. And the difference here is simple. Carroll isn't judging Jackson only by statistics. He has faced Lamar himself and experienced the challenge of trying to stop a player with such rare abilities. During the interview, Carroll made a statement that caught a lot of attention. He said, "When you have a guy like this, you have to understand the play never stops." The coach continued by saying, "When the game gets into his hands and he's on the move like that, he's as good as any player who has ever been out there." When someone with decades of NFL experience says something like this, I believe it carries more weight than many opinions created only to generate debate or controversy. What stands out to me the most is that Carroll wasn't talking about potential or what Lamar could become in the future. He was talking about something he has already seen happen with his own eyes. And that changes the entire conversation. While some people are trying to use one difficult season as proof that Lamar is declining, others still see the same player who has caused problems for defenses for years. But these criticisms didn't appear out of nowhere, and understanding where they came from helps explain why Lamar Jackson became one of the biggest talking points in the NFL over the last few months. To understand why Lamar Jackson started receiving so much criticism, we need to go back to the 2025 season. The Ravens entered that year with huge expectations, and many people believed the team would once again be competing among the NFL's best. But things ended up going in a completely different direction. Injuries started piling up, the team's overall performance declined, and the results fell short of what fans expected. And when that happens, the quarterback usually takes most of the blame, especially when he is the face of the franchise. The interesting part is that many people started talking about Lamar as if he had a terrible season. But when you look at the full picture, the situation is not that simple. Even while dealing with physical limitations during part of the year, he was still putting up numbers that many quarterbacks around the league would love to have. The problem is that Lamar created such a high standard for himself that any season without an MVP-level performance starts being treated as a major disappointment. The change in the way people viewed him became even more obvious during the offseason. First came the surprise of seeing him ranked only 69th in the NFL Top 100. Then came more discussions placing Jackson outside the top 10 quarterbacks for the 2026 season. Honestly, when I see a player with 2 MVP awards receiving this type of evaluation, it feels like some people are focusing only on the last few months and forgetting everything he has accomplished throughout his career. What stands out the most is that many of these criticisms appeared during a time when several of Baltimore's problems were not only connected to the quarterback. Still, Lamar became the main target of the conversation, and this created an important question. Were people forgetting what makes Lamar Jackson such a different player from everyone else? The answer starts with a trait that very few athletes in the NFL can reproduce. When Pete Carroll explained why he respects Lamar Jackson, he didn't talk about trophies, statistics, or records. Instead, The coach focused on something every defender who faces Lamar understands very well. Some quarterbacks follow the offensive plan perfectly. Others separate themselves with elite passing ability. Jackson goes beyond those categories because he can turn plays that look completely finished into moments that can change an entire game. That is why Carroll's comment about Lamar received so much attention. According to him, the play never stops when Jackson is on the field. It may sound like a simple phrase, but it perfectly describes the challenge offenses face against him. While many quarterbacks depend on everything happening according to the original design of the play, Lamar can create when that plan breaks down. And many times, that is when he becomes even more dangerous. What stands out to me is that this is the detail many critics miss. When people talk about Lamar Jackson, they usually remember the incredible runs and the highlight plays. But the real problem for opponents is his unpredictability. A defense can execute everything correctly for several seconds and still watch Lamar escape pressure and create something completely unexpected. Very few players can create that level of uncertainty for the other side of the field. That is probably why so many coaches show so much respect when they talk about him. They understand how difficult it is to limit a player with these abilities. And Pete Carroll didn't come to this conclusion by watching games from a distance. He experienced it on the field. Looking back at his matchups against the Ravens helps explain why he speaks about Lamar Jackson with so much respect. One of the biggest reasons Pete Carroll's comments receive so much attention is because they came from experience. He isn't praising Lamar Jackson only because of his reputation or because he heard positive things from other coaches. Carroll faced the Ravens during important moments and had the opportunity to see what makes Lamar such a difficult quarterback to stop. When a coach speaks after dealing with a player on the field, those words carry a different level of credibility. The first major example came in 2019. In that matchup, Lamar led Baltimore to a victory over Seattle, while finishing with 259 total yards. Beyond the individual numbers, what stood out was how dominant the Ravens' rushing attack was throughout the game. Baltimore finished with an incredible 298 rushing yards, turning one of the league's most respected defenses into spectators watching an offensive showcase. A few years later, in 2023, the same thing happened again. Baltimore dominated Seattle in a 37-3 victory from start to finish. Lamar finished with 247 total yards and once again led an extremely effective rushing attack. The Ravens ran for nearly 200 yards in that game and completely controlled the pace. It was a type of performance that stays in the memory of any opposing coach. When you look at those two matchups, it becomes much easier to understand why Carroll speaks so highly of Lamar. He watched his defensive plans get tested by a player capable of attacking in multiple ways. And there is one important detail in this story. A huge part of Lamar's impact came from the constant threat he created with his legs. But injuries limited that part of his game in 2025. And that leads to why so many Ravens fans believe 2026 could look completely different.
If you're enjoying this breakdown, smash that like button to help the purple flock grow.
If there's one thing that makes this entire discussion interesting, it is that Lamar Jackson now has the perfect opportunity to answer his critics on the field. Throughout his career, he has faced plenty of doubts. People said he would not succeed as an NFL quarterback. People said he relied too much on his running ability. People said he would not stay among the league's elite. Every time, Lamar responded the same way, by playing football at an elite level. The situation heading into 2026 looks much more promising than what he faced last season. Jackson enters the year healthy again, without the limitations that affected part of performance in 2025. On top of that, Baltimore worked to strengthen the roster and improve the offensive line. For a quarterback with Lamar's style of play, better protection means more time to throw and more opportunities to use his ability as a runner. What makes me believe Lamar is still a serious MVP candidate is pretty simple. He has already won 2 most valuable player awards in situations that, on paper, were not as favorable as the one he is entering now. So when I look at a healthy quarterback, a stronger offensive line, and a more talented team around him, I see a situation where Lamar can quickly put himself back among the biggest names in the league. Another reason for optimism is that many of the recent criticisms came from the idea that Lamar was entering a decline. But the reality could be moving in the opposite direction. With his health back, better protection, and a stronger offense around him, he will have the opportunity to show that 2025 was only a setback in a much bigger journey. And if he does that, all the conversations about rankings, lists, and doubts could disappear quickly, because very few things change people's opinions faster than a dominant season on the field. Lamar Jackson went through a difficult period, but the conversation around him seems to have ignored everything he has already built in the NFL. The criticism increased after 2025, but Pete Carroll's words show a different perspective on the Ravens' quarterback. He wasn't only talking about numbers. He was talking about the impact Lamar creates when he is healthy and playing at his best level. The biggest thing I take from this discussion is that one disappointing season does not erase the player Lamar Jackson has already proven himself to be. He remains a quarterback who can completely change the way a defense has to prepare and play. With a stronger team around him in 2026, he has a major opportunity to answer those questions on the field and remind everyone why he has already won 2 MVP awards. Now I want to hear from you, Ravens fans. Do you believe Lamar Jackson will return to an MVP level in 2026 and silence all of his critics? Or do you think the questions surrounding him are still fair? Leave your comment below and let's talk about it.
And if you're a true Ravens fan and love keeping up with everything happening around the team, don't leave this video without sharing it with a friend who's just as passionate. They're definitely going to enjoy this. See those videos on your screen right now? I picked the first one especially for you, and the other is recommended by YouTube. Go check them out and I'll see you in the next video.